I'm just going to read. Tonight's meeting is being recorded by Lakes Region Public Access, and I want to thank Philomena Day for recording this for us. And after our presentation tonight, we are going to open it up to public comments and questions, and we ask that you come up to this microphone and introduce yourself and your address, as this is a public meeting. Thank you. I'm Erin Apostolos. I'm the library director, and I'm here tonight with Betty Strader, one of our library trustees, who is also the chair of the design committee, and the library's architect, Ron Lamar from Valley Brensinger. Tonight we're going to break our presentation into three parts. I'm going to talk briefly about the library renovation goals, because I know a lot of you have heard that already. Betty's going to talk a bit about the design, the process for picking the architect, and then Ron's going to present the plans, and then we'll open it up to questions and comments, so please hold them until the end. So the library has been working on the library renovation project for several years, and when we first started we had a master plan committee, and the master plan committee worked on getting feedback from the community. We did surveys, which I'm sure a lot of you have filled out. We held 10 or 11 public meetings at this point to get feedback from the community. We consulted and questioned the library staff, each person individually, to get their feedback on what they felt the library needed. We also went and visited a lot of libraries in the area, Altonboro, Plymouth, Bristol, Guilford, just to name a few, to find out what they have done, what they felt worked, and what they felt wasn't working for them. We then hired Tom Ladd from the New Hampshire State Library, who is now retired. He'd been there for 30-some-odd years, and he's a consultant, and he helped us design our building program and put all of our goals into writing. ADA life safety compliant, of course, was one of our main issues. We're looking to add elevators, ramps. We want to lower our stacks so that people that come in wheelchairs can access all of the collection. And we're also looking to add a front and rear ADA entrance. We also wanted to do as few levels as possible. Originally, we had talked about doing a one-story design, but in order to stay at our current location, we can't do it in one story, so we wanted to do as few levels as possible to make it easier to staff, friendlier to those with mobility issues, and parents with young children. We also wanted to increase space, but also to add space that the community could enjoy. Our children's room, we wanted to move down to the first floor, make it a warm and inviting place. We visit a lot of children's rooms, and they're the heart of every library. They're very exciting, and we wanted to be able to see them, but not hear them, so we wanted a glass in, and you can see an example of that there. And also very important is to have a teen area. We have an excellent teen librarian, John Locke, who does amazing things. He has increased our statistics for teen usage. We get the most of any library of our size for teen visits. And we need a space for them. We don't have one. And so we wanted to design a teen space. And also our staff workspace. We're a very close staff. We get along well. But most of you have seen our staff space, so we're a little too close. So we'd like to have a bit more space and also put our space where our problem areas are, the computers and the teen area. Also, small study rooms. We visited several libraries that had these, and their only complaint about their small study rooms is they wish they had done more of them. So they're very popular in libraries. Circulation desk. A lot of people come to our circulation desk and they want help with their technical devices, and we're working with people to check their books out at the same time, so we wanted to put a tech desk with the circulation desk. People can sit down and we can help them and then take a patron here and there. Reading notes, you can sit and have a quiet place to read, or read the paper. Small gathering areas for our knitters. I know some of you are here tonight. Book groups, homework groups. And then furnishings with multiple uses. You can plug your devices in to charge them. And the staff and our patrons really wanted an exterior space. We live in the Lakes region. Part of the year it's quite beautiful. So we wanted a design that people could sit outside, read a book, check the internet. And we also wanted to have visibility with Main Street. Our number one complaint from patrons is the lack of parking. So we wanted a way to get more parking either through the municipal or library parking. And sustainable. that was a comment from our patrons and also the trustees and staff wanted a more energy efficient building. So more windows, more natural light with passive solar, more high efficiency HVAC, and we have to redo all of our lighting fixtures, put LED fixtures in, and then also the potential to add solar panels on the roof. Big feedback from our community was that they wanted us to stay on Main Street. We heard you. And so it's very important that we have a convenient location to help bring people into town, to support our merchants, but also people who grew up in Meredith have a fond memory of their library, and it was very important to them to keep that memory. So we're staying on Main Street. And some of you may remember I started working in libraries over 25 years ago, and we had no idea that computers were going to be as important as they are. Card catalog, magazine rack, all the paperwork that was involved in running a library took a lot of time, and libraries have evolved quite a bit since then. So when the library expanded in 1988, they couldn't imagine what was coming in 30 years. So now we use computers, you can download books. Most of our catalog, actually a lot of our catalog is online now, there's no more card catalog. And so looking ahead 30 years from now, or 100 years from now, we needed to make sure that we had a space that would be flexible enough to adapt to the changing times. So that was another consideration in our design. And now I'll turn it over to Betty Stringer.
Thank you, Erin. The trustees are really excited about this design that Ron's going to present tonight. And I'd briefly like to explain the library trustees' process in making the choice of this particular design. You're looking at the back side of it now, and clear up some confusion that exists over our decision. Last year at the town meeting, 88% of the voters agreed to expend funds for a committee that would determine if it was feasible for the library to remain at its current location. Following many hours of work over the past 6-month time period, the committee negotiated a contingent agreement to acquire the Price property adjacent to the library, which could be used for additional library and municipal parking. And everyone, all the trustees, the public, everyone agreed that was critical to making this plan successful. They also interviewed 3 architectural firms, and based on some preliminary plans, they selected a firm to further develop its design. They met with the library staff, and they produced a detailed design with a projected cost and presented it to the committee. The advisory committee presented it on October 30th to the public, to the trustees, to the select board. So this committee, it was understood when it was established, would be advisory in nature, and the town manager confirmed that, stating the decision to what to do with the library would ultimately rest with the trustees, even though it's a town building. That was the intent in separating the library from under the town. It's have its own control board of trustees. So the trustees took the committee plan and we subjected it to further review. This led to some concerns about the design, about some problems with where they would have to remove ledge and phasing and some uncertain costs that we were unsure about. So knowing that the final design architect could differ from the committee architect, we met with 3 architects that had previously been involved in the project and asked them, what can you do to give us more of what we want? And they all gave us great designs. It was Sam and Delia, the committee architect, Chris Williams, who had done the 88 edition, and LaValle Brunsinger, who we'd worked with previously and had great trust in. So all these great designs came to the trustees, and we dove into them. We wrote about their pros and cons. We talked about the differences. We studied them. We looked at the studies again. We looked at the programming goals again. And every trustee made their own decision. We got together in a public meeting. We went around the room and talked about what we thought and took a vote. It was unanimous. The LaValle Brunsinger design by Londmar would be the best for our community. And I'm going to explain to you why we decided this design was best. So the key decision points were the design and program space, the risk mitigation, maintaining operational abilities, flexibility and expandability, costs, and the architect expertise. So Our programming goals actually specified how many square feet we needed in different levels. The children's department needed 1,400 square feet. The teens needed 400 square feet, and the adult collection needed. And the most important thing is we needed a very large meeting room or program room that could be subdivided to make. We only have one room that we can use for programs because the kids can't meet upstairs in the historic attic under the code rules. So we are very limited with what programs we can offer at the library. So we wanted a big meeting room. We can meet multiple things. If we want to have a big thing, we can do that. But anyhow, the new library design will function completely on 2 levels. There'll be a friend's library space for book sales or whatever in the basement, but the entire library function will be on the 1st floor and 2nd floor, and Ron will show you exactly how that'll work. The youth are on the 1st level, the teens are also on the 1st level. They'll have a collection space, a gathering space, they'll have their own computers, but they'll be tucked away. So it's more like if the children see them but not hear them, the teens are trust but verify. The staff will have, where the circulation desk is, they'll have sight lines to all 3 entrances. The program room will be operational after the library closes. Everything won't have to end by 8 o'clock because the library will be separated and locked off, but all the facilities of the program room will be available. The small study rooms, which will have different sizes, will be available to different groups, and it all will be at no cost to the organizations. There'll probably be an online sign-up or something. Maybe we'll name them after islands in Meredith. So I want Oak Island for 2 o'clock. Okay, and then risk mitigation. This was big because the design that the committee proposed did involve ledge removal, either via chemicals or via blasting. And there was a worry about what danger this might be to the church or the historic library and the unknown costs involved in this process. They also were going to raise, the other designs were going to deal with the different levels by raising the 88 addition, which was a very viable plan. It's been done many times, raised buildings, and they knew how they could do it. Essentially, you come and you slice off that addition, you lift it up, and then you reconnect everything. There was some concern that when they connected everything, there might be some problems. And that might lead to some risk or unknown costs. And we also had some concerns about the driveway. Right now, it's a 2-way driveway. If anyone's met someone coming down, you know the concerns. We were going to turn it into a 1-way driveway under the other plans, but we were still going to have a lot of the same issues. There was going to be interference with cars, with pedestrians. It was still going to be steep because there's ledge under that. So we decided, hey, we can use this real estate much more effectively. I take back, our architect decided, we can use this real estate much more effectively. We can put the program room there, give us a lot of extra space. Patron convenience. The other designs were going to have to close the library because this process of raising the building would mean that whole area of the building, which is where all collections were, would be not accessible to us. So there would be no way to run a library in just the 2 rooms of the historic building. So we were going to have to move the library off-site, a very expensive process. Under the plan we've selected, the library is going to stay open for the entire time of the construction. We'll lose our parking spaces in the back, all 6 of them. But we'll have a couple of long weekends when we're moving either into the new addition or back into the renovated historic building where the library might have to close on a Saturday. But basically, we're open for business. We'll have programs. You can do whatever you would do at the library. And the parking lot will be constructed at the same time. And we won't have 6 or 7 elevator stops. We'll have 3. The 2 main levels that the library's on, and then the elevator will go to the basement for anyone who wants to go to the Friends area. And all the facilities will be accessible via stairs, the elevator, or some ramps to take the difference to the historic building, to the old addition. Flexibility. The other advantage of this plan is we can expand at very minimal cost. That large program room we're putting in, we're using the first level of it. It's going to have a high enough ceiling that we could drop a second level in there in the future at minimal cost if we ever find that's necessary. It'll give us another 1,700 square feet. The other design plans didn't have an expansion plan. They suggested we could maybe take over the handicap parking, or if the church left, we could go over there. Those are possibilities in the future, but this gives us expansion from day one, should we need it. We can move the interior walls if we find, well, we need more space for the teens, we need more space for this collection. We can move those walls. We've looked at solar panels on the roof. For $180,000, we could get a system that would give us all the library's electricity. A lot of money unless we get grants or we enter into a power purchase agreement, different options to look at. And then we're also retaining the historic character. And the best part, I'm putting my accountant hat on now, is that we have a guaranteed maximum cost. $4,358,500 in 2020. If we could build that building today, we could do it for $3.7 million. If we did it next year, we could do it for $4 million. The other designs were all anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million more. And given we don't know what's going to happen with inflation, our number, whatever happens with inflation, our number's good to 2020 building it. So delays are expensive. The sooner we do this project, the cheaper it's going to be to the taxpayers and the less fundraising we have to do. The architect has fixed his fee at $275,000. Anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 less than the other architects were asking. And our architect, best guy out there. He does libraries, he does them well. You ask him a question, he knows the answer because he's done it already. In Langdon we did this, in Kingston we did that. The projects came in under budget, and some of them returned the excess money that they didn't need to the towns at the end. Or they added another thing that was a wish list, our solar panels. We build this thing cheap enough, we get our solar. So, while I've made this seem like a no-brainer, there are trade-offs. There are cons on our list for this design. Here's what they are. When we looked at the 7 levels that currently exist, we said, how can we deal with that? That's our problem. Do you know how hard it is to administer a library with 7 levels? Or be the mom who's trying to trudge her kids all the way up with one and a baby and a toddler to the historic level? We could use a 6 or 7 stop elevator. If you were waiting for that elevator, you'd be waiting a really long time. We could tear down the old addition. That was proposed by one of the architects. Start all over, level the floors. No one really thought that with our frugality and thriftiness, we wanted to do that. We could raise the old addition. That's what 2 of the plans suggested. Or what Ron suggested was, hey, let's put ramps in the same areas where we have the steps, going into 2 parts. On the first level, going into the teen room, and on the second level, it's going into the business center and the adult computer area. You have a few steps you could go down, or you could take a ramp that goes down and comes back on itself, half walls, use the space for books, displays, art, whatever it is, very open. Handicapped, elderly, the stroller mom, any of those things, they'd use the ramps. Anyone who's mobile, go down 5 steps. You're there to the difference. All the designs, even the 2 that raised the building, had to have ramps. They just had to have shorter ramps because when you raise the building, you line up the first level to the historic building, but the second level doesn't match up. The heights aren't the same. So we still need a ramp. This just uses a little more ramps. The other factor was losing the driveway. You've all experienced the driveway. One of the other designs actually had a real neat thing where you could come up the driveway, you could drop somebody off at the door. It was a great feature, but it wasn't enough to offset the fact that then when they went forward after they dropped someone off, they were going right behind cars backing up and pedestrians walking. So it was, and it would be used as a cut-through. If you see a lot of traffic by the post office, you just go right through that little one-way driveway through the parking lot, and that was why they wouldn't let us build. One of the reasons they kiboshed a couple other sites where we tried to build was because they can't have a cut-through. So the next steps. The 2018 warrants, the purchase of the Price property, we need to vote yes on to expand parking. As soon as that passes, the fundraising campaign begins. To the public meetings, this is the first of hopefully a few to solicit input and support for our plan. We want to know, do you like it? You know, do you think we need it? Work with the town on the municipal parking lot, the timing, the funding. We need to get the money for a design fee for the architect. The sooner we get it going, the more money we'll save. And at some point, there'll be a bond for the library building on the town warrant for the amount we couldn't raise. So this quote, I think, is very appropriate about a library outranking any other thing a community can do for its people. And this is by Andrew Carnegie, who you all remember the Carnegie libraries that were built from grants that he provided in the late 1800s and early 1900s. He did 2,500 libraries across the world, 7 in New Hampshire, but he pioneered a lot of library concepts. The idea that you could go and take a book off a shelf was all about him. It used to be a librarian would go and get the book and bring it to you. But he always required public support when he made grants for libraries. Libraries continue to evolve. There's so much more than books today. And so the library trustees were asking the community to support the renovation and expansion of this design, support for the parking lot, and the sooner we act, the cheaper the cost will be. So the library trustees, who are all here, Anne, Paul, Lisa, back there, Bonnie, and then retiring trustees Pam and Duncan. We're all leading the project, but we want to involve everyone to make it successful. Ron? I'm going to pass out some diagrams so you can look at them while Ron's speaking, while he's getting set up. So if you'd like one, you just kind of raise your hand and I'll send them down the road.
Thanks. So hi, I'm Ron. So I started working with the trustees in January of 2016, and we went through an entire process of not only what they needed in the library, but what they were looking to do. And at that time, we had investigated how could you possibly add on to the library. And so we had a diagram back then, I think it was in October of 2016, which is very similar to the diagrams that you'll see tonight. One thing we wanted to do when we approached the project of a renovation is to let the existing library stand on its own. So we didn't want to sort of take over the front of the library. So what you see here is the meeting room. It's a very simple structure. So lots of people talk about how do you do this in a very simple way. And one thing I've learned for 27 years working with builders and contractors is you got to keep it simple. That's what allows you to build it affordably. That's what allows you to build it right. So what you see there is a very simple structure connected to the existing library with a glass wall, and that becomes the lobby. The other nice thing about historic buildings is they normally have a front door. There's normally granite. It's a very beautiful experience. We try to leave it alone, because once you start messing with that and try to make it handicap compliant and everything else, it loses the character from the history. So what we do is we put a second front door in. And so as people come down Main Street or up Main Street, they're going to have a handicap accessible pathway that leads you to a new handicap accessible door. And for those who want to experience the history of the library, they can still use this door. This door does not need to comply as an exit, does not need to comply as a handicap entrance, and we leave it alone. There is money in the budget, though, to fix the stairs. And so what this does is it sets up sort of a look, if you will, of the library. And you'll notice when I start flipping around, I have a 3D model we can spin around, that the look is we're taking cues from the existing library, the historic library, as well as the 1988 edition. So this looks like a complete composition, but we're not copying the old library. Having worked on some libraries with Peter Machad and the Historic Commission in New Hampshire, that's one thing they want you to do, is make sure people realize that this is a 2018 building and this is an older historic building. We don't want to compete. So in the back of the building, this is the back of that same meeting room, a very simple structure. Oops. And then this addition is the same simple structure, it's the same width. And so what we're doing is creating these two very simple bars that are connected with a piece in the middle. This connection piece between the two simple buildings, that becomes your main entrance from the parking lot. So when you park on the Price property and you come down again, it's all handicap accessible and comes right in to this entrance. This entrance happens to be in direct line with the entrance from the street. So instead of driving through the site, you can walk through the library. So how that works is this is the new entranceway from the front. Main Street is here. So as you come in and you walk right straight back out, you're in the backyard. This lobby gallery, so we can hang up some paintings and such, the library was talking about having a gallery space. So this space in here, it provides you with restrooms, the kitchen, the storage, and the meeting room. There would be a divider wall, sort of comes down out of the ceiling, and you could lock that up so that when the library closes, you turn off all the library systems, and this is our building within a building. When we first started talking, they visited some of the libraries we did. One of the nice things about those libraries is if you had a Boy Scout meeting going on, if you had something going on a Sunday, they could use the library space and you didn't have to turn anything on. You didn't have to have the staff come down. You had this room to use. On the flip side, right now this is where all your computers are, and you have a sitting room here. So using this, and with the fireplaces and such, using this probably the way it was used years and years ago, is when you come in the front door, there's reading rooms on both sides. As you come in the front door, there's the staff desk. So you got staff members here who have their eyes on both doors. You have a staff member here through this glass wall that you saw in the elevation towards the back. So this staff can see the parking lot, they can see the front door, and as people come in here, they can see you, and these staff members can see you. What we've done is distributed the staff. So you've got staff over here near the teen area. This is the children's area in yellow. This is the meeting room, and everything else in blue is adult on the first floor. So when we go up to the second floor, and I just want to reiterate that this is just a very simple structure, and this piece right here is a very simple structure. We're going to modify this stair. For anybody who's been in that stair, okay. So you'll see in the plan that it's no longer going to wind. So when you come down and you get to the part where you need to wind, we're going to put a landing in, built right over those stairs. So we're not knocking anything down, we're not messing with anything, we're just building a landing over those stairs. From the halfway landing, so as you come up the stairs from the meeting room, we're going to extend another piece of stair and then an exit door directly to the outside. So in essence, we're taking your fire stair and repurposing it and making it handicap compliant. Then we have a stair over here, which is the new stair, which is handicap compliant. So those are your two means of egress off of the upper floor. The elevator that we talked about is here. The reason for that is you see this red line that runs along here? That's your existing building. What we want to do is we want to keep all of the structural points, all the load-bearing points that exist in that building now, we're going to keep them there. And what that means is when we have this glass connection, you'll be able to walk into the library and you'll be able to see the back of the old library, because you'll have that brick coming down. And then we have windows, we're going to pull the window out and pull the sill out. What we're not going to do is blow off the end of that building and then try to figure out how to hold it up. Again, it's time and it's money, and that's what we try to do, is sort of keeping these things simple. Where you have the areas where you have now where the stair is, rather than try to take that stair out and monkey around with that, it's just going to be a stair that the staff can use. It's not handicap compliant, it's not open to the public. If they never use it, they could put potted plants on there, they could use it for storage. But we're not going to deal with that. And then in 1988, they have boring information from their geotechnical work when they built this addition. And we know that the area back here is cleaned out with no ledge, because that's where the footings were. And that's where they dug the hole, basically, for 1988. And so that's why we picked that location, which was also a strategic location, because it gets us to where we want to go. And it puts, like they said, this is only 35 inches. So you're only going down a few steps. So that's where we put the ramp. You get the ramp, the elevator, and the stairs right there. On the second floor, when you come upstairs, it's all adults. The staff area is, you know the hole, when you walk in the main library right now, you look up, you see the rail? We're gonna put just a glass wall around that railing, not taking the railing down, just putting it right behind the railing. Now the staff can actually see down to the front door, so you have more eyes on the front door. And then we got 2 offices here. This is the adult library. We've got quiet meeting rooms alongside the church, genealogy room, a business center. So essentially your teen room and your business center, look out those windows of the 1988 edition. So when the kids come in, they can kind of wave to one another and then go find their way to get there. Restrooms on the upstairs. This is where we've built this structure, the same height, everything is that structure. So there's economy of scale, right? You've got the same building getting built twice, one here and one here. But this allows us to come in later and build a platform. So we wouldn't take the roof down, we would put in new columns with the floor in this location, and this could become more library space. So that's sort of how that works. And there would be a new roof over this. So that's basically the second floor. To get up to the storage room, we still have access from the dangerous stair in the back for the staff, but we also have these steps from here. And we're just using that entire attic as storage. So the public won't be able to go there, so it doesn't need to be handicap accessible. And one of the biggest complaints, when people always say to me, after you're done a project, and we go back and we do a post-occupancy review, that's pretty much what lessons learned, and I go back and do this to all of our projects, so we learn from what we've done. Storage, storage, and storage. And so the nice thing about your project is you're gonna have a nice big storage room up there. And then the third level is actually down in the basement. So you got 2 levels of library space, and then you have the level down here, which is the old program room that you have now. Basically becomes a friend of the library space. So this is how we fix it. When we say modify the stair, we cover the winder, we add 2 steps, we kick that wall out. So now you've got your stair, and it no longer winds. It comes down 90 degrees, which is what's required by code. And then the elevator would come here, and then we have a ramp down to there. And we keep the bathrooms on all the levels. We're putting in new handicap bathrooms, but why take out the old ones, right? You just have more restrooms to use for the staff. All the existing mechanical systems, we're gonna put all the new mechanicals in with the old, as these things are replaced. And the site, you can see here that in 1988, they had a 10-foot setback on their drawing, so we came right up to that 10-foot setback line, if you will. We're building on top of the ledge. Remember, our floor is the same floor elevation as this existing library. So when you have to go up those stairs, and in the back of the building, where you go up the stairs on that porch, we're able to build our slab above, and we're able to pin it to the ledge. So we don't have to dig down, if you will, and build foundations. So now we've got our new addition. This is the area back here. These are the parking spaces, neighbor's house. And one thing we wanted to do was the existing war memorial that lists the names and such. We're thinking of around the tree, down here, around the statue and everything else, to relocate that from here down to there. And now you've got a sense of place. So people could sit down there, hang out down there, all around that sort of war memorial place, if you will. And for questions, one of the things is we have a 3D model here of the library that we can spin around. Because when we were talking about what you don't see here is you don't see the trees. But what you do see is the renderings that you're looking at is kind of, you're looking down at the library. So it's as if you're like 12 or 15 feet tall. But when you model this in real life, that lawn is still there. See the hill? So it's still, we're not changing any of that out front. That's why our walkway that starts from here goes all the way down and ends up over here, because that's what you need to do to get the ramp, or the walkway sloped for handicap compliance. So that hill still remains. But for the most part, I'll just open it up to questions. You don't have to walk up.
They asked you to say who you.
Yeah, I'm Liz Lapham. And I want to thank you for publishing this on your website so that I was able to look at it this morning. I have two sort of related questions on safety and accessibility. When I looked at this, if someone had a medical issue in the library and an ambulance had to be called, how does that ambulance get to the back door? Does he drive over the pathway? And also the fire department, if there's a fire, how does the fire get close enough to the building? I mean, if it's in the front, I can understand, but if it's in the rear. So that was one question I had.
Can we address that one?
Sure.
Okay, so Ann Butler met with the fire chief. Ann, would you like to address what he told you? Just a moment, then we'll get your other question.
When I met with Ken, he said that there is a whole book, and it's about this thick, and it's about this big, and he quoted chapter and verse. I sent it over to Ron. Ron said yes, he was aware of it. Ken's 2 points that he made with me was that they have to have a 50-foot turning radius, like when they're coming up High Street and into the parking lot. That's a minimum, 50-foot minimum, which he looked at the design, and it isn't all spec'd out, but he said it appeared that that scale would be appropriate. And he said based on the book and the codes that they follow and that architects have to follow, he didn't see any issue with that, because if that hook and ladder truck that we have can get in there, that's how the ambulances and so forth would get in there as well. Am I correct on that?
Okay, what if the parking lot's full of cars? I guess
I asked him that.
the problem I see giving up that roadway is that there's no other way.
So the fire trucks can't get up the roadway now.
No, okay, but an ambulance could.
Well, I asked him about that.
I'm more concerned for this ambulance,
Right, the
Well, I
ambulance
think the
would go up
ambulance
High
could
Street,
fit the parking lot.
and the
What
fire,
would they do, drive across the pathway?
no,
This is
no,
not a long distance. We're not talking about
they
a
don't
long
need,
way.
they don't get that close to the building with the equipment, number one. Number two, if they need to go to the back of the building, when it's designed, it will be designed so if there are cars in those spaces, the fire truck and the ambulances can still get through.
All right, and then the second question I had was more on accessibility. And the plan that we saw a week ago or 2 weeks ago with the drop-off seemed to make sense to me. And so now if I'm looking at you right, and I like the confusion, anyone who would be drive into the parking lot, and the handicapped person, whether it be someone in a wheelchair, someone who doesn't walk well, or maybe someone who has a 6-week cast on their foot,
Right.
they have to park in the parking lot and then walk.
Sure, like at Hannaford, there's no drive-up parking or drop-off or handicap.
Well, that's not true in Hannaford. You can drive up to the door.
Right, you
and
can
let
drive up to
people
the
off.
door. You can drive up to the door.
So in this plan,
You can drive to this area and just drop them off.
You know better than I do.
well, I guess that's the point I was trying to make.
So I think-
Rather, you're dropping them off in a parking lot, not at an entrance.
That's correct, and that's why I tried to address that is being able to drop them off correctly at the door would be convenient, but you're giving up a lot of real estate for people who wouldn't use that feature that often. Most people, even the elderly people who come to the library, drive themselves. They park and they come in.
Okay.
So I also want to point out that when you come into the parking lot and you stop, the passenger side door is here, and that walkway, this is like the striped yellow walkway, if you will, between handicap parking. So you drop them off right here, and they come right in here, and this is all handicap accessible. So that was a good question, though, because one thing we do have to consider in everything that we do is the safety and the security, as you all heard. I do a lot of schools, I do a lot of libraries. Winchester was the first time that I've heard about issues that we should start considering in our library designs.
You're stuck,
I can't go any further. This is as far as my head. You're welcome to come to the podium.
Carol Gergen, I have a number of questions.
Yep.
In looking at the concept drawing of the front of the library, particularly the area in front of the new meeting room space, to my
patio.
eye, it looks like, no, in the front. It looks like the hill that exists now is no longer there. Is that true?
That's not true.
Okay, then
so
the
what you-
concept drawing is a bit misleading.
No, it's because
To me.
we are standing much higher looking down on this. So when we look at the model again, you can see that that hill is still there. And that's the grading, so that hill, see the hill? It's still there, so that's still coming down. This model is that rendering. So how we do this is we actually build the building for real in the computer. And then so that's what you're looking at right here. It's a program called Revit. And then we take that and we actually put the real looking materials and the trees and so forth, and we drop it into a photo. Because of the perspective that you're looking down, you can see, like that wall is like twice as high as that wall, but because you're kind of looking down at it, it looks flat, but it's going to be the same hill, just like you saw in the model.
All right, and so the main entrance to the historic entry,
Here.
okay, looking at that sidewalk or that bricked area or that flagstone or whatever, how is that? Is that elevation the same as it is now?
It is, right, so all your garden spaces over here, that remains the same. And the path goes behind that and down towards the statue. And that's how you get the grading that you need for the handicap ramp. So if we came down here, or here, or here, it's not compliant. But if we come from that space right there, all the way over to where the statue is and past the statue to the sidewalk, it is.
Okay, my next question is roofing materials.
Yep.
If you would pull up the previous rear elevation that shows the new meeting room and the roof, looking down on the roof.
Yep.
You had another slide previous to this.
This one here?
Yes. So the flat roof area,
Right.
what material is going to be used for that, and is it absolutely flat?
It's not absolutely flat, it's a good question. We have internal drains in that area, and the roof slopes at 1/4 inch per foot, which is the requirement for what they call low slope roofs. And that material is EPDM. And EPDM is basically, it's rubber roofing, let's just put it simply like that, and it's all glues. And the roofing that you build today is a lot different than the low slope roofs of the past, simply because of snow loads, water loads, and drift loads. That never used to be taken into account, as stringent as it is now in the code. So these flat roofs and the pitched roofs are all engineered to deal with the fact that we have snow in the area, rain in the area, and everything drips off this roof internally.
Okay, my next question about the roofing is the original roof on the historic building.
Slate.
Slate.
Is that good? Is it in good condition? Will that same roofing material be used on the meeting room?
So, the existing roof, there's a report that was done for the library that talked about the condition of the slate roof. We're not doing anything to the slate roof. We're re-roofing the 1988 piece of it, and we're putting that same roof that we use on 1988, the shingles that we're re-roofing, on the rest of the building. And those are reinforced fiberglass 50-year shingles, like a
Okay.
landmark shingle.
And those were gonna, if I could just say, those needed to be replaced in 19 anyway, 2019. That was end of life for the old Egyptian shingles. So we'll match those when we replace that to the new area. Right now, we have asphalt and shingle, and people don't really notice.
So, in looking at the earlier concept drawings, I was concerned that the overall appearance of the building with the historic building and the 1988 edition and the new meeting room space would be compatible and would have the same kind of design appeal.
Right. So there's basically, so what we did is, you see the nice arch over the doorway? Well, I suspect that in 1988, they wanted to use that language. And so rather than come over here and try to do something else, just because, you know, that's what architects like to do. I can make fun of architects, I'm an architect. So, and we make fun of each other all the time. So taking that same language and moving it over here really allows this to look like it's one one composition, one building.
Okay, I have two more questions,
Yep.
as long as they're here.
That's okay.
So I'm interested in the HVAC system.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what's current, I'm not sure whether it's going to be all redone, and can you speak to that?
Sure, it's all gonna be redone, and we got air source, heat pumps. Why are you shaking your head now?
I thought we were keeping the boiler in the historic building for, till end of life, and we were doing all the heat pumps in the new addition and in the old addition, and we were getting our AC in historic from there. Is that incorrect?
That's incorrect.
That's
We're keeping the boiler while the construction takes place. So, obviously, we have a turnover to take place. So we keep the existing boiler, which is a hydronic system, and you see all the fin tube radiation around. And so we can't just disconnect the boiler and put a new boiler in. We're using air source heat pumps that are going to heat and cool the library when it's done.
Okay, two more questions,
Sure.
and then I'm done for now. Regarding replacing the current lighting in the existing facility, will all the lighting in the new piece as well as the current structures be up to current energy efficient standards?
Yes, we're gonna do all LED lighting.
And what is your recommendation as an architect on this project about the solar panels?
So I'm a member of the U.S. Green Building Council. I'm LEED accredited. I'm all for renewable energies. I think that solar panels are still a little bit expensive, but the return you get, we did an analysis. Actually, we got all of the bills and so forth from Aaron. You're looking at about $200,000 to put enough solar panels on here to make a dent in your energy efficiency for the building. The other thing is we have to consider that all of this building that we're wrapping around your existing, those exterior walls, which are not very well insulated, now become interior walls.
Right.
So the building itself is gonna become more energy efficient than it is now. And if you're able to afford it, or through a power purchase agreement, which I sent an example of that we've done on other projects to Aaron, to put solar panels on here, I think it would be great. The one thing that I'm very interested in is what Tesla just came out with, which are the solar shingles. Now, right, they're not proven, which is a problem I have. I always like to do things that we can go visit, so when we all start working together again, I'd like to go visit some of these buildings and say, look, this is what an air source heat pump looks like, this is what the LED is, this is the pros and cons of these things. One of the nice things about your building is if we turn it this way, whoops, this is south, right? So you do have these big trees here, so that's something to consider. But if we were able to put solar panels on all of this, and these pieces up here, the question is, I wouldn't touch the slate roof. The one downfall about putting solar panels on the roof that I've learned over the years, because I've had the luxury of actually doing this more than 20 years ago, so they had to go up and do some roof work on the roof. You gotta take the solar panels off to actually work on the roof. So lots of people now are putting them over the parking lots or down on the ground. And so you see that a lot sometimes. But I do think that solar energy is the way to go. Knowing what I know about the Price property, knowing I know about the ledge that you have here, I think we should do some fundraising, find out if there are people interested in sustainability and do a geothermal system and drill those drills right where the Price property used to be. Drill those borings, or boreholes, I should say, for a closed loop geothermal system.
Thank you.
Geothermal systems, by the way, are the biggest return on your investment. In other words, it pays you back quicker than solar energy.
And I don't know if we mentioned the fact that the whole building will now have sprinkler systems in it, so that'll be a big plus, and it'll also all have the cameras and
Yep.
all that up to air conditioning.
Hi, Mark Billings, Meredith. If you go air source heat pump, you must have a backup heating system.
Why?
We will learn that lesson in the high school, because if temperatures drop below 15, below
Okay,
20
so-
below,
You're talking
air
about,
source heat pumps don't
right,
provide enough heat.
right. So the newer generation air source heat pumps, and we can review it, we can take a look at it, we can talk about it. We could do fan coils but we believe that the air source heat pumps are the way to go. We're actually doing them right now on a project that we're talking about in Bath, Maine. And so the older,
With no backup.
right, the older technology, so what he's talking about is, as crazy as it sounds, when it's 0 degrees outside, there's still heat in the air, right? That's nuts. But there's heat in the air because -10 is colder than 0. And so when engineers talk like this, architects raise an eyebrow and say, yeah, right. I don't want to get the phone call. The newer air source heat pumps that are out there today can deal with temperatures that are lower. The other thing that has changed dramatically since that first round of air source heat pumps is the way we insulate walls, windows, doors, and roofs. So right now it takes a lot longer. So if it's 72 degrees in here and we had an old wall, it would take 24 hours and this space would be down to something that's uncomfortable, like 55 degrees, heading towards 50 degrees, then heading towards 45 degrees. Because what it's doing is it's equalizing the temperature with what's outside. Because of that R value, everybody always hears the term R value. Well, that's the R, it's the resistance. And so how long does it take for it to be as cold in here as it is outside? And then anybody who has camps or lake houses or things like that, you can actually get colder in here than you are outside because of the R value. It equalizes and then it warms up outside, but it's still cold in here because the heat's going in the other direction. So what they've done, the newer air source heat pumps can work at much lower temperatures. And we can take a look at that, but that's the kind of thing where I think people in the community who have an expertise on this, if you have any HVAC contractors in town, things like that, I say we bring them to the table with our renewable energies discussion and say, how do we get the biggest bang for our buck? But right now in the price is the air source heat pumps. Yep.
Can you bring that picture up,
Yep.
please? I'm happy to go to the podium. Lynn, Montana, Meredith Neck Road. When I look at that picture right behind you, there you go, I see an upstairs sort of a balcony railing and stuff like that. But when I look on here, I can't figure out where it is on this drawing.
Okay.
I don't see it anywhere.
Okay.
What am I missing? I mean,
It's
I
right
see
here.
that rounded thing, but,
Right, that's it.
what's
It
that
says-
jag? Is that? I guess that's that, okay.
Yep.
And when you look at this picture again,
Sorry.
that's okay. Where is the quiet study rooms going? And so those 4 windows are in
Quiet study.
4 of the studies, and there's 2 in the corners that have no windows, is that it?
And they all have glass walls to the inside. So if I bring my laptop up there and I want a room where there's no glare or anything like that, I can sit in a room without a window. As we move forward, if it's decided, can we put a little window here and here, we can take a look at that.
So what's the dormer for?
For head height. We just want to make it a little bit, and,
Head height?
yep. So we want to give it a little bit of character on the outside of the building. And we want to bring it up to get more natural light, so a little bit of a higher ceiling in that area for those small rooms. Because the higher you get the windows in the building, the more daylight, the further it comes into the building.
You don't need head height in the genealogy room or the business center?
Yep, those are on the downstairs, those are in the
Second.
existing piece right here. So that's the height of your existing windows now. See, ours is a little taller, but this is, the genealogy room is here, and the business center is over there. That's the old part, that's the existing part of the library now. So if you weren't up on that upper level where the book stacks are, that's where those rooms will be.
Well, I have to tell you, I think this is a brilliant plan. I love it. I love what you've done with the old building front and center and standing out so. I like the balance, the symmetry of matching the old addition. I wouldn't like the idea of tearing down the old addition. The town spent millions of dollars to put that addition there. When it comes, it's very functional, serves a purpose, there's no reason to tear it down, so that's very good. I like the price compared to the other plans. I just want to commend the board. I think you've done an excellent job. I think they deserve it.
We'll appreciate any support and feedback you can give.
And pledges.
So, yeah, well,
Jack Carty, Meredith. There's a lot of different roof angles in these buildings, and we're talking about solar ballpark, real rough ballpark. What percentage of roofs would be usable for solar, presumably facing south?
we haven't figured that out yet simply because of the tree line. The first thing we would need to do is take a look at how that sun angle comes down, where the tree line is, how much sun you can get in the morning with the eastern sun, and how much you can get with the western sun. So that analysis hasn't been done yet.
Okay, and this second question, there's something, there's a guaranteed price, guarantees mentioned in the presentation. The last time we met in this room, a local contractor said, it's been his experience, the guaranteed price doesn't always turn out to be what the contractor is willing to bill it for. Who guarantees the price?
So, it's a great question. So how this works is we had Milestone Engineering and Construction price the addition. When they price the addition, we're at a concept phase right now. So they're gonna protect their budget. And so they give a budget and then they add 10%. That's a contingency. That's their contingency. Like I wouldn't tell an owner that's the owner's contingency, that's if we, hit something unexpected. That's not it. They're taking 10% of their cost, $300 and some odd thousand, in their price, because they just don't know. So we've looked at this thing, and they've come here, they've visited the library, they've looked at what we're doing, they've priced everything up, they know the systems, the materials, and so forth. Then they add 10%. Then what I do is I add another 10%. And the reason, because, and this is the best way to put it. This is a public project. When you vote on this, right? Whether it's guaranteed, not guaranteed, maybe, maybe not, there's no more money in the bucket. Once this thing is approved, we have a certain bucket of money. So what we need to do is protect that budget. So what we've done is the contractor, the construction manager who priced this, added 10% contingency. We then added 10% contingency to cover escalation between now and 2020. He priced this as if we were starting construction in 2018. So if we start in 18 months or 12 months or something like that, we've got that extra 10%, another $300 and some odd thousand. So that's 20% just on construction, just to protect the construction budget. So now there are times when a contractor is forced, right, because of architects, like myself. We do the entire project, we design the entire thing, we spend 8 months with a client, we put everything into this, and we give it to a contractor and say, your market set, go. You've got 4 weeks to figure it all out and give us a low price. And you wonder why, it's not fair. I mean, a contractor comes in, he does his best job that he can, but if he misses one thing, it's not his fault, right? He doesn't know. So we have to have that kind of contingency. In this process, the contractor's at the table with us from the get-go. And he's understanding, you're doing this, and he's helping us out. We're benefiting because the contractor's there. He's got that 20%. In addition to that, we add another 5%. That 5% is the owner's contingency. And that 5% is used by the owner for anything that comes up. If they want to, if an issue comes up they want to deal with, if they want to add something, if they want to change something, they've got another 5%. So when we say, and we do, most of my work is public projects. So the way we protect our budget is because people want to know, when we vote on this, are you going to come back and ask for more money? I'd get run out of town on a rail in most towns if I had to come back and ask for more money. So that's the reason why we say it's a guaranteed maximum price, is because they've priced it as a GMP, And we've got these three pools of contingency that are not, so basically you've got $300,000 in the CM's number, you got $300,000 in escalation, you get another $155,000 in the owners. I've had clients who say, let's get rid of that. Let's just, let's take some of that stuff out. And I say, don't do it. You really, I wouldn't do it. Because by the time the contractor is actually out there building this stuff, he's gonna absorb that 10%. And then we're gonna have the 10% that may get absorbed during the, during the bidding process. And then there's the owner's 5%. I'll also say this, we had a good question last night at Rotary that came up saying, how do you protect against like unforeseen crazy stuff, right? So back to the way we used to do it in the past, where it was low bid, you give it to somebody for four weeks and say, okay, market say go. There are industry spikes that happen all the time. So I guess if I would have been quicker on my feet last night, and they asked what's the biggest hurdle that I've had to deal with, it's industry spikes. We'll be in the middle of design development or the construction documents, and the CM will come to the table and say, you have no idea what's going on with aluminum right now. For some reason, my aluminum prices are through the roof. I can't get aluminum anywhere. So we're using hollow metal frames. There you go, right? Or, yeah, I heard it, right, there was something on the radio today about steel. Our country now will be paying more in taxes to import steel. I won't guarantee you, but I bet you the steel on this project comes from Canada. Guess where that's coming? Across the border. So, in 2004, 2005, they were building the Olympics in China. We were working with a contractor who came to the table and said, steel prices are through the roof. What are we gonna do? We can't. And in order to control that cost, we went back and we did it in concrete. This project right here is designed in such a way that it can be done out of wood, pre-engineered wood, or it can be done out of steel, it can be done out of wood studs, steel studs. So we have options. And that's why it's so important to work closely with a contractor, so that he knows all the scope of work that he needs to look at, and we benefit from listening to the contractor, because he knows all these crazy spikes. The other thing is buying power. I've been on many projects where we specify Sherwin-Williams paint. Everybody knows Sherwin-Williams paint, right? It's great stuff. Contractor comes to the table and says, I got 3 bidders. All 3 of my painting bidders want to use Benjamin Moore because of their buying power. So we say, okay, we need exactly the same type of paint. So if we specified an eggshell, latex, or acrylic, or high-performance paint, we get the same Benjamin Moore, latex, high-performance, or acrylic paint. It's just a different, he's got more buying power. The other thing about CM at risk, because that's where the risk comes in, right? That's your question, who's taking the risk? Because of the contingencies, and because he's working at the table with us, he assumes that risk. Because he says, look, I've built libraries before. I've built libraries with that guy, meaning me. So he knows the level of expectation. When he bids the trades, you pay him a fee, so he gets his fee. So no matter what happens, he gets his fee. And you pay him for general conditions. The porta potties that are on site, the temporary electric, the temporary facilities, the trailer, things like that. That cost, again, that's his cost. Every time he bids a trade, he comes in and he says, I got 4 masonry bidders. I've got 3 painting bidders. I've got 4 steel guys. I got 3 or 4 framers. And you see all of that. All of the bids are shared. And the CM also says, these 2 bids right here, they're pretty close. But this guy right here has like 100 people in his company. This other guy's got 10. Why don't we take the guy with the 100 people in his company? Or, there's a reason, because the builders have relationships with the subcontractors that no architect has, no owner has. So you benefit from that. So do we have contingencies in this number? Absolutely. And for that reason, I'm able to say to everybody that, Frank LeMay, the owner of Milestone Engineering and Construction, priced this up. We've got the contingencies, and that's why we're pretty sure as we can be about the price.
Just a comment, I worked in the building supply business for a while at Garrity's. And that's where I learned the term in and out. Get in, do it, and get out, and run to the bank before the paint falls off the wall. Quick question, your presentation said, quoted a 2018 price if it were to be built today. My understanding is the property for the parking lot will not be available until mid-2019. Has that changed?
Nope, well, they may get out earlier, they have until May of 2019, is my understanding.
And that property will be at no cost to the library project because it's going to be paid for by the town, is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm an alternate library trustee on a couple of boards, and I live on Dolphin Road. I think I read somewhere you have quite a bit of experience. I was wondering what experience you have in building libraries with contingencies, and how's that worked out?
So, I'm gonna pick on three of my favorite ones. The Langdon Library. The Langdon Library, they went out for donations, and they got so many in-kind donations. Another good reason to have all the bids sort of shared with the owner. Northwoods Forestry donated the maple for all of the furniture. Piscataqua Design is a guy who makes unbelievably good museum quality furniture. He built it at cost. The brother of Northwood, what is it, anyway, is Abenaki Lumber. When he found out the brothers did, so he came in and said, no, I gotta donate. So, and so all of like the interior trim within the entire library is basically donated by them. Light fixtures, Rockingham Electric in Newington, on that particular library. They donated all the library lighting and controls at cost. So they basically said, this is what we're buying it for. So the contractor, when he bid the project, asked the electrician for furnished and installed light fixtures. So that if the guy really didn't come through and give us the furnished amount, we were covered. But they did come through, and that electrician went and bought the light fixtures from them, and we recognized the savings. So it's not always just dollars and cents that people need to donate. If there are people in town, so Wolfboro, I'm meeting on the 23rd of March in Wolfboro, because there's an HVAC contractor who wants to talk to us. And he's basically saying, you know, I want to donate a portion of the project, and he wants to do the HVAC. So, and I'm working on that with Milestone. And that's on the ballot right now in March to get voted on. So the Kimball Library, same thing, they raised money, but they continued to raise money. So actually, that project was completed in 2008, and I think in 2015, I got a phone call. Yeah, we just raised another $600,000 we want to spend, or $60,000 that we want to spend to build that courtyard that we've always talked about. And so there's lots of ways to donate to a project. And a lot of these libraries, when they come in under budget, as you mentioned, so those three in particular came in under budget. Every project that we've done, CM at risk. And you know, it's not rocket science. There's no more money. Like there's just, that's it. There's, you know, the taxpayers voted, you have that amount. It either comes into zero or there's some left. So yes, every single project there's some left. The least of which has been like $50,000. The most have been like a couple of $100,000. One project, and that contingency is not because we're all geniuses. The contingency is because people come in and they find better ways to do something. At the Kingston Library, a bookstore went out of business. And the guy who leased the bookstore said, get your shelves out of my property, right? You guys close, you're not paying me, get out of here. So they gave him a date to get out. Well, he didn't get out. So the guy said, I'm donating all the shelves at the Kingston Library, which is under construction. That was like $65,000 worth of shelving that went right back to the owner. They had to pay for trucking. So, you know, they sent the trucks, picked it up, and moved it into the library. So lots of ways to make sure and protect that budget, and that's really what you want to do throughout the project. But what you don't want to do is cheapen the product. You got to use good quality systems, good quality materials, because this is going to last 50 years. You don't want to spend money on something like you said, or who was it? You know, get in, get out, and then the paint falls off. You know, you want to make sure that everything you're doing is reviewed by everybody. Everybody sees what it is, and it's good quality materials, because that's it. That's our reputation, right? When that thing is done, the builder's going to walk away shaking hands saying he's done a great job. We're going to do the same thing, the trustees in the town. If we do it right, nobody will remember what this cost. If we do it wrong, they'll remember it to the penny. So that's just incentive to do it right.
So what you're saying is you haven't had an issue with the costs where
No.
you guaranteed them?
So far. No. But, you know, at the same time, I'll say this, all of the general contractor projects that we've done, we haven't had issues. In other words, they've come in on budget as well. It's just, it's like I said, the contractor, he's had 4 weeks to put something together, you know? And sometimes I feel like it's not fair because they just don't know. I mean, they haven't had the benefit of sitting there for 8 months, realizing what we're doing, how we're doing it. Contractors also, like, for instance, when we talk about the simplicity of this, I've learned all this from builders. It's that simple, you know, younger, I don't look that old, but, you know, I'm in my 50s. You know, you show up and the guy's looking at you like, what the hell is that, you know? Oh, excuse me, I shouldn't. But, you know, and then they tell you, keep it simple. You know, and we call it KISS, right? Keep it simple, silly, I guess. But, you know, if you keep it simple and it's easy to build and that contractor can get in and get out, he's happy. He's made money, client's happy, everybody's happy, and that's how it works, and that's how you have a successful job. If I stop making everything so difficult, so crazy, and so weird, and it's difficult to build, it just costs a lot of money and a lot of frustration and a lot of time. Yep.
Hi, Richard Gerken, Bob, you were there for Rotary last night.
Yeah.
I'm on the Capital Improvements Project Committee and as a member from the Planning Board. I want to clarify the parking lot and the purchase, because the town, it's on the town warrant. If you picked it up at City Hall or at the library or somewhere. That purchase, which of the property, what do you call it, the Price property, is that what it's called? Yes. Or Price? That property is being paid for, at least half of it is being paid for by what's called an expendable trust fund, which is an existing fund for downtown parking. That has been, money's put aside that can be drawn upon to pay part of the cost. And then the town is going to pay the rest of it. That will have negligible influence on tax rates or anything like that. It's a no-brainer. We need the parking regardless of what's going on with the library. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
So Carol Gerken, if this is an unfair question, just let me know. I am thinking about your strategic plan for fundraising. And earlier it was mentioned that, quote, there will be a fundraising effort, and then the town will be responsible for the rest. So I'd like to have some kind of guidance about what is it that the private fundraising effort, what is that goal? And what will the town expect to see on a warrant article in the future?
Originally, it was intended that we would go for a warrant article this year or have it in the budget to get the architect fee. It'll take Ron and his people, if there's support for his design, a number of months to make a schematic design. Like right now, we're showing a couple of restrooms on the second floor. We might want to move those restrooms. You know, we don't exactly like where they are. So we're going to do a lot of refining. We're going to bring a lot of people in. We're going to do tests. We're going to drill holes in the ground. There's a lot of work to be done. So we had originally hoped that we would get funding. We need at least, you know, for his fee of $275,000, we need at least $100,000 to get the schematic designs done, you know, of that fee. And that's what we really wanted this year. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with CIP and the budget process to get that money. So we're kind of waiting. But the question was how we know about the fundraising goal. Right now, we don't have a fundraising goal. Right now, we're looking to know if the community wants this library. I'm sorry, Liz, could you?
I don't think you need to know whether we want to have you do something for the library. We're all here. We've been doing this for a couple of years.
Right.
I mean, that statement just made me laugh a little.
I'm sorry. Do they want this library? Because originally, the trustees have worked very hard because when they proposed a one-story library last year, they didn't realize that while they were saving the taxpayers' money and they were trying to repurpose the old building, it wasn't what the community wanted.
Right.
They wanted to stay there. So now we want to make sure hey, this is our design, this is what the trustees thinks makes the most sense for Meredith. We're asking Meredith, do you agree?
I think it's a very strong plan, with the exception of not having a drop-off, quite frankly. And I'm looking at this where you have this outdoor seating, why anyone wants to sit out and look at the side of the Baptist church, I don't know. So why don't you take, if you could relook at the plan a little,
Yeah,
and see if
yeah.
you can make that a wider thing, so somebody in the rain can drop off their
Yeah.
disabled child, you know, and somebody
And
else
that's a good
on a
comment.
snowy, icy day does not have to run their wheelchair over the sidewalk.
So-
I don't know why that couldn't be made wider for a car to go in, drop off, and come out.
So what we
And
can,
also, I like the idea on Mondays that I can drop my books off.
so what we're trying to do is create a children's area and a drop-off. So if, like, so to the points that are being made, this is the opportunity, right? This is the opportunity for people to say, you know what I really want? I do want a safe place for the kids to play in the back of the building, but I want to drop off. I want, you know, an outdoor book deposit, you know what I mean? I did a drive-through, lessons learned, don't do it. I won't pick on, you know, there are certain, my son's just learning how to drive, so I'll pick on him. Not the expert you want, pulling up to your new library, throwing the book in the book deposit, okay? You may lose some parts and pieces to the building, so, but those kind of comments are the things that we want to hear going forward, to make sure we've got everything that's important to
Can
everybody.
I address the fundraising question? We have a fundraising committee. Mr. McFarland is the chair of the fundraising committee. He's working, he and I have been up to Plymouth State to look at grants to raise money for the project. And one of the things we want to do once we want to build a model of the library to take with us to fundraisers, because people want to see what the library is going to look like when you go into a big donor. They want to have an idea. So Jim really wanted to have that model. He was involved in raising money for the Archie statue. And some of you may remember he had the little Archie statue to take around. It's very important. And we also want to work with a professional fundraiser to help us figure out that goal and to set up a plan. The professional fundraiser will figure out how much money is really out there that we could raise. And we are not at that stage yet, but we are really close. And if anyone wants to join the committee, Mr. McFarland's sitting in the back of the room, and will be happy to take any volunteers.
And I'd also like to say that with regards to the patio space in the back, it's attached to the children's room. So there are a lot of activities on a pretty day where the children's librarian might utilize that space for story time. They may have an owl come from the Swan Lake Science Center, they read the book about the owl, they talk about blowing bubbles in science, they go out and they blow the bubbles. There's a lot of advantage, and there's going to be a direct door between that patio and the children's room, that it will give a lot of youth programming opportunities to extend to the outside. So we don't want to lose that, but we'll work it if there's another way that we could fit a drop-off in, because I agree with you, Liz, that it's a very valuable feature. Yes, Lynn?
Lynn Montana,
Can't hear you.
do we have
Go to the
zero?
microphone. Go to the microphone, please.
So is there zero money in the pot right now, and we have to fundraise all 4 million of it? How is that?
That's
Or do
right.
we have any? Nothing. We have nothing in the pot. We
Um,
have to raise all of it.
No, the Friends of the Library have already donated $10,000 to get us started. Did anyone not hear my big voice? The Friends of the Library.
Matching $10,000, the first $10,000.
So if we've got anyone who has their checkbook with them, has some appreciated stock, we can talk.
One more thing. I'm listening to Liz, and her point is very good about having somehow, maybe you can't drive up there and drop off your books, Liz, but in an emergency, that pathway, couldn't it be wide enough for a
Yeah.
vehicle to drive on?
We could,
You're already gonna keep that area of the parking lot
yeah.
free. In an emergency, you could get a vehicle, an ambulance, at least an ambulance to the door.
Absolutely, yes, and so, you know, we're showing a seat wall, we make the seat wall wide enough, we widen this path, And what they're saying is the ambulance comes in, backs right up. Absolutely.
And I'm just curious, has there been any study involving the fact that that's gonna be a municipal parking? I worked at Hawkins on Main Street, and that parking lot out behind that building, got filled up. Practically all the time. I couldn't park there, particularly in the summertime. Either with church people on Wednesday, forget it, you couldn't park anywhere in the area. Or town employees parking back there all day long, you know, all weekdays. It's not gonna take very long for that parking lot. Was it 34 spaces? I can't read that
31
number.
spaces.
It's 31.
31 spaces.
This is the lot number is 43.
Yeah, 31 spaces.
Right.
It's not gonna take very long for that lot to be starting to be used by people who drop their car off and go away for the day. Is there gonna be a time limit? You can only park there for 2 hours, like on Main Street? That might help.
It's a municipal lot, so it'll be up to the town to decide any restrictions.
We could ask, right?
Ray's been waiting.
Yes. Before I get to the real questions I have, I do want to comment and throw a question at you on your explanation of contingency. I'm Ray Moritz, and I live in Meredith on Water Street. The 10% is in the cost. It was a cost contingency, and that's in
That's in milestones,
the
no?
miles, it was also in, for Chris Williams, because he used the same one, and Sampson and Delia actually had 15%
Okay,
cost escalation.
Yeah.
The next one, you said you had another 10%, but that was shown in the cost comparison as inflation, and in fact used to get your price out to 2020. And
correct.
since that wasn't inflation money like that wasn't identified by anybody else, money was added to theirs as an addition, so they could go out that far. I had some issues with that, but that's not the point. The point is, the Salmon and Delia actually do have another 10%. Actually, 275,000, I think it is. And if you add up that 10% and you add up theirs, and you add up the more money that they put in for the owner's contingency, you have about $275,000 less than they do in contingency.
I
So
don't
if
know
you're
what Sam
guaranteeing
Delia
a price
did.
for that, huh?
I don't know what Sam Delia did.
No, but I do. I have all three, and I looked
Okay.
quite carefully. And it's about $275,000 less in the, what's called the construction contingency, and $100,000 less in the owner's contingency. So I worry about this guaranteed price, especially when in your pricing, you have some almost 30 items in there that are identified as allowances, not prices.
Mhm.
So you're allowing $10,000. If it costs 20, who covers it?
Right.
So you're saying the contingency, but you have dramatically less than the other guy.
So, I understand, but I do want to say that we do a lot of public work. And when we put this together, we don't just throw numbers around. And I'm not saying that anybody else did, I'm just saying that we are very comfortable with the numbers that we put together. We've done projects with Milestone. We've been working, Milestone actually builds all the build-outs in our office in Manchester. We know them, they know us, they know the quality of work. I don't know why Milestone priced it differently for Sam Delia and added more contingencies to those numbers.
No, they didn't. They did Chris Williams.
Okay,
Sampson Lee, different. Canesco, I believe is the name of the company.
okay. So all I can say is, are there any builders in the room? And the only reason I'm asking is, like, for instance, if they don't know enough detail, then I suspect that they will put more of a contingency. So, for instance, their number may be lower, but the contingency is higher because they just don't have as much information to go by. So that makes their number lower, so they want to inflate the contingency, and that makes sense. And so, you know, I don't I can't speak, I guess what I'm saying is I can't speak to how they arrived at a number, but if they're saying that their number is good, then their number's good.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I don't want to drag into the mud on this, just point out that in many places where you did the financial analysis comparing, not you, but the trustees, if they thought something was in one guy's and not in the others, they added it. Well, in this case, they need to add 275,000 and another 100,000 to yours to get the contingency up to the same level of protection that we're getting on the other.
But is that level of protection the same level of protection? Because if they don't need to protect as much because of the information that we gave to Milestone versus the information that they gave to their contractor, no one knows. I mean, you don't know, I don't know.
No, that's why it's called contingency.
That's
It's
right,
what we
that's
don't
exactly
know.
right.
And they have more, is my point.
Yeah.
But at any rate, let me move on to the more important issue, I think. And just to be clear, I have no issues or criticisms of your design. I think it's really nice. It's very good. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Looks good. Price is right in the ballpark.
thank you.
It's good. I have no criticism. But I do have issues, and I'll bring this out, with the salmon and the lid quote and design. And it goes like this. Now, I've heard it said by the trustees on several different occasions that you didn't get to see the design until after the report, and then you weren't really satisfied with it, and that led you to go look for another quote or another architect. It's okay.
Ray, I don't want to be rude, but we only have 5 more minutes.
All right, well, I'll go
Go ahead,
fast.
go ahead.
All right, so anyway, the claim was made that you didn't see the design until after we made our presentation, then went ahead. Well, I'd like to remind you, first of all, that on August 24th, you presented to our committee a document telling us why you preferred, actually, Chris Williams to Salmon Delia. Okay? And so, you guys, 15 points. I don't know how you do that without seeing the designs, but your very first one is important, and I'd
I'm
like
sorry,
to quote.
excuse me, Ray, I'd just like to clarify that we saw the 3 architects that the advisory committee interviewed with. What we did not see was Sam and Delia's detailed design until October 30th. Is that, and detailed pricing until the 30th. It was my understanding from the members who were on that committee, from the trustees, that Sam and Delia asked them not to take the design out of that room.
I know about that. I would say we took it out of the room, certainly, to the select board. We all got the same information. The only thing that wasn't in the one that you got in August, early August, was the detailed layout of the inside. You got the gross area, and it was only after working with Erin and her crew that they fleshed out exactly what you wanted inside.
That's correct, and that was
So-
our issue, is we didn't know what was going inside. But I don't think this is the venue. Why don't you and I and the member of the trustees
Well,
get
you
together and take this another time?
All right, I'd be happy to do that, but there is one really important point. Of the 15 issues you had, why you preferred it, the very first one, by lifting the 1988 edition, his design, his being Chris Williams, provides as few levels as possible and creates 95% of public usage on 2 main floors for ease of public access, eliminating the existing 7.5 level staircase, and converts this area to now usable space. As a result of that, and the trustees' insistence, we took Sampson and Delia's design, which he had already said should not raise the building, it didn't make financial sense. But at your insistence, we went back and said, if you want to be considered, you have to raise the building. So you've pumped $600,000 by my calculation into his cost, and then have applauded Ron's work for not doing that and being prudent and saving us the money.
So,
I think what we need to do is go back to Sampson or Salmon and Delia and offer them the opportunity to bid the way they had the first time. I think it's the only ethical thing to do. I'm not saying disregard your work, Ron, at all. But I think if we're going to do a fair evaluation, we're going to give them the opportunity to come back with what they recommended in the first place, and we forced them to change. And then I think you'll find, by the way, if you go through all the numbers, they're very close.
I was a guest on that committee, I was not a member of that committee. But we only had 3 choices to choose from. We had the Sam and Delia, which had a 6-stop elevator. and it kept all of the stairs. We had the Chris Williams design that raised it. We had one of the Sonia Mistechek's design that raised it, tore down. We did not have a design that did what Ron did. We didn't have that choice. We could only choose between the three designs, and I had never even thought of what Ron had come up with. And so when I said to Ron, we cannot have, all these split levels, this is not acceptable, we can't have the staircase. His design was to do what he did. It was the first time I had ever seen anything like that, and if any of the other architects had come up with that, we may have liked that as well. That's my answer to that.
So your issue is putting a ramp between them means it's no longer a level. So 6 levels become 2. Very not, that's not very fair.
Unfortunately,
But we do have another member here.
we have to leave, you just, right? The community
Right,
center's closing.
Right, our permit expired 3 minutes ago.
So I want to thank the Friends of the Meredith Library for supplying the refreshments. We also have a door prize that we want to draw for a $25 gift certificate to their Once Read books. And anyone that has any questions, please, email me, I'll get them to the trustees, and we can continue talking about this.
And we also have the forms that we laid out where you can write thoughts down or anything to give us additional info. We'd appreciate that as well.
And Pam Whiting won the... Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
What?